Good to go.
Excellent. All right. In compliance with the notification requirements of Ohio's open meeting law and section 101.021 of the codified ordinance of Cleveland, Ohio, 1976, notice of this meeting has been publicly posted. All boards and commissions under the purview of the City Planning Department conducts its meetings according to the Robert's Rules of Order. Actions during the meeting will be taken by voice vote. Abstentions from any vote due to a conflict of interest should be stated for the records prior to the taking of any vote. In order to ensure that everyone participating in the meeting has the opportunity to be heard, we ask that you keep your connections on mute. We then ask you to use the raise hand function feature before asking a question or making a comment. The raise hand feature can be found in the participants panel on the desktop and mobile version and activated by clicking the hand icon. Please wait for the chair or facilitator to recognize you and be sure to select unmute and announce yourself before you speak. When finished speaking, please lower your hand by clicking on the raised hand icon again and mute your microphone. We'll be utilizing the chat feature to communicate with participants. The chat feature can be activated by clicking the chat button located on the bottom of the WebEx screen. Call-in users can unmute by using *6. All meeting activities are being recorded via the WebEx platform. These proceedings are also being live streamed via YouTube. All requests to speak on a particular matter via our website or email have been considered. We have also received emails from those who have provided written comments on a particular matter. We'd like to call the September 9th Landmarks Commission meeting to order. Mr. Pettit, please call roll and announce. Please call roll.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you all for your patience. Ms. Anderson.
Here.
Ms. Bailey.
Here.
Mr. Bonezzi.
Here.
Mr. Kalikia. Director Collier. Mr. Dreyer.
Here.
Councilman Jones. Mr. Santora.
Here.
Mr. Strickland.
Here.
Mr. Tarasik.
Here.
Ms. Trott.
Here.
Madam Chair, we have a quorum.
Excellent. We'll begin with our certificates of appropriateness. On my screen, there we go. Oh, we don't have any public hearings today. We'll begin with certificates of appropriateness. We'd like to call our first applicant to unmute your phone, announce yourself, and tell us about your project. The first applicant is located at Tremont Oaks, Phase 2, West 14th Street, new construction.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay, this is Rick Marin. I can't get on the WebEx. I'm not sure what the problem is. Dan, are you there?
Yes, I am, sir. This is Daniel Sirk. I'm the architect for the project. With me today also is my wife, Eva Sirk, and we work at SA Group LLC, 1322 Old River Road, Cleveland, Ohio.
Dan, do you have access to the computer screen?
Yeah, Carl is currently presenting the screen, Rick, and the existing contextual photo slide is up right now.
Okay, I can't see anything, so I'm not sure what the problem is, but in any case, I guess we can go forward and you can display everything.
Yeah, if you want me to, Rick, because you can't see the screen, I'll walk the commission through the slides and
okay, I'll just give a brief introduction. I'll give a brief introduction, and then whenever they need you to show screens, that's fine. First of all, thank you, committee. Sorry for the technical problems. You saw the project a few weeks ago, and you gave a couple recommendations as far as changes. The architect incorporated those, which was windows on the side and landscape. I'm sorry, that was Tremont Landmarks that wanted the windows on the side and the landscape. You thought those were good, and then you added the fence, which we incorporated. We took that back to Tremont Landmarks, and they approved it unanimously. They liked it, and we're now coming back to City Landmarks, basically with the same plan that you saw last time, looking for approval, but it's turned out well. So with that, I guess if you want us to go through it again, we can, or if you can guide us on what you would like to see.
Why don't you go through it quickly? I don't believe I was attending your last meeting, but I can pick up quickly if you just do a brief overview, and then we can jump into your updates.
Okay, Dan, why don't you go through the presentation quickly?
Okay. Madam Chair and the Commission, this slide is representing the existing conditions. As you can see, phase one is located in the photograph in the center, and I note the windows along that elevation. Carl, if you move along, or who's ever controlling the slides. Oh, there we go. So here, this is the current site plan. And at our previous presentation to the bodies, the elevation to the north was set up in such a way that it was a blank elevation without as many windows as we're currently showing. After getting the feedback from both groups, we flipped the unit on the north so that the office area sits and faces that direction. And so as we move along through the presentation, you'll see the updates that we've made. You also see here that we've introduced the city standard fencing along West 14th, and then enhanced the proposed landscaping at the triangular edge of the property. You can move along now. So this is the landscaping that's being proposed for skirting the building and out front, very similar to phase one. Again, everyone's probably familiar by this point of how these units work internally. If there's any questions, I have these slides to refer back to them. So we can skip through these, Carl. Again, this is just the overall floor plan. So this is the current proposed design that was unanimously approved by the local. What we did from previous presentation was to include the fence, the additional landscaping that you can just see the edge of the crabapple in the perspective, and then also introducing additional windows along the north facade by, in essence, flipping the unit. Again, there's a view of the front of the building, bookending the existing phase one. And you can move along. If you can back up one slide, please. Rick, I don't know if at this point, we're showing the slide looking at the building with the...
Thank you, Don. I am now on. I can see it. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I didn't know if you wanted to discuss it all about the proposed or working with the local to get the landscaping in the tree lawn area.
Yeah, that's the two buildings together. If you go to the site plan.
Thank you.
Do you
That
have
was,
is
the
the one with,
yeah, that one right there. Perfect.
okay. That shows the landscaping on the triangular section there, which will be incorporated so that when you're coming as an entrance to Tremont, no longer will this look as a barren place. There'll be landscaping there with the fence and then the two buildings. So it'll make a nice entrance from Tremont. What was added was that landscape as well as the windows on the north side of the building to make it more attractive. In addition to that, I had talked to Michelle at Tremont West, and what we'd also like to do, it's not part of this presentation because it's not on my property, but she said she could work to get trees planted in the tree lawn on the fronts of the building, which would mimic the opposite side of the street as well and make a nice entrance. So we'd like to add trees in front of all, that whole area, all on the tree lawns, to be west of the sidewalk, to add even more vegetation.
So Rick, without any other input, I believe that this would conclude our presentation to the commission this morning.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else from the city to speak on behalf of the project? Or the public? Okay, then we will open the floor to the commission, or I'm sorry, do feedback from the local committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Michelle Davis is here from the Tremont West Design Review Committee. We also have a letter from Tremont West Development Corporation expressing concerns about the use of the building. And I don't know if, Michelle, you plan to speak to both of those? I think you're muted, Michelle.
Good morning, everyone. Donna Gregonis is also on the call today. She's a shared staff person between Ohio City and Tremont West, and she's the person that works with our Economic Development Committee who submitted the letter. So she will speak to the statement from our board Economic Development Committee. And I'm here to report on the local historic district. And when the group came to present their conceptual drawing, you know, they were not pleased with the initial drawings. And when they came back to the committee with the added windows instead of a blank wall, as Rick and Dan had stated, they all approved it. So they didn't see any issues with the phase 2 of Tremont. And then Donna, if you wouldn't mind speaking to Jaime's letter.
Hi, good morning, Commission members and Madam Chair. Thanks again for having us. This is Donna Gregonis from Tremont West Development Corporation, the Neighborhood Development Director of Ohio City and Tremont. There are a lot of
Please mute your microphones if you're not speaking. Thank you.
So Tremont West Development Economic Development Committee did review the Tremont Oaks Phase 2 project, and they do not have issues with the design, but they do have issues with the use being sought. And the concern is that the city, which is the Landmarks Commission, is looking at this and approving something that is being proposed as a full-time Airbnb or as a commercial use. And these are not allowed under the current residential code. So that is the concern of the commission or the committee. And I just wanted to make sure that we brought that up. And that's also what the letter that was sent is referring to as well. Thank you. I guess I should add, there is no objection to the design, but there is issues with the use, and this is a fundamental concern of the commission or of the committee, that the use is not in line with the occupancy of permit being sought today. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that feedback. We will now open the floor to the commissions for questions and comments. Ms. Bailey?
On the last meeting, could we go to the site plan? The comments I made, I have any issue with the design of the new proposal, but I just want to go back to the comment I made from the last meeting. The vehicle, just wanted to make sure it's just enough space of the vehicle just going in and out of the space, and I don't see what the use of the space behind the building. It's not showing what activity is going to be happening behind the building where it says proposed to stores up apartment building. It's not telling me what's going to be happening behind there. So those are two comments I made from the last meeting. I see dimensions there, and I see a curve right there. I asked the developer and the architect, just, the vehicle, how to make sure it's just enough space for the vehicle to join the existing structure, just to make sure it's enough space for the vehicle to manipulate, to get in and out. And what is the use of the space behind? So I don't see any use or anything saying what that condition ought to be in a new structure.
Yeah, we drove some cars back there and it did work fine. Our existing concrete pavement is on the site and exactly where it's going to be when the second building is built. So you can drive down that driveway. It's about 11 and a half feet wide. And we were able to get cars in and out without using that space behind the building. However, I would like to not commit to how that space is. Some people said, I think it was on the last Tremont landmarks, possibly about adding a parking space behind the building there. And we don't need to do that as far as the zoning requirement. However, I'd like to leave that open with the idea that if people, as we get more functional, need that space to back into and then go forward, that's a possibility, number one. Number two, it could be an additional parking space. And number three, it could be a location for additional trash removal cans. So I want to be flexible with that space behind there until we're actually functioning on how we're going to use it.
All right, because that's what I was thinking. If you're going to use that as a trash pickup, or if you have any form of any utility pad or anything, that's why I was wondering what is your use for that space back there.
Yeah, no, your point is well taken, and that's part of the difficulty with this site. There's not much that can fit into this site, and I thought the architects were extremely creative in making it able to be used, and for a site that really helps Tremont from a urban planning perspective. It makes a nice look and nice entrance from what it was, but the site is a difficult site. Your point is well taken, and that's why we want to be flexible with that space behind there.
Whenever you decide to share that information with the local design review as well as the staff, whenever you decide what that's going to be.
Yes. Yes.
Ms. Bailey, any other questions?
That's all for me.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Anderson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Hopefully the audio is working a little better for me here. I have been on the Airbnb site and I've, located the current Tremont Oaks. They're being offered at, $108 to $145 a night, and that doesn't include the fees. So it sounds like a pretty, pretty profitable venture. I know that people in the neighborhood have concerns about the Airbnbs, and I think there's some restrictions on building new for Airbnb. The current building, I actually think the building is somewhat attractive. I have issues with the lighting on the current building. To me, it's a little bright. It seems more appropriate for a commercial structure than a residential structure. So I'm not sure if that's probably the lighting will continue on the two sides facing the public on this new building. But
Have you driven by the site at night?
Regularly.
Okay, because most people really like the way it's lit up with the up-down lights. I've got.
I don't mind the up-down lights. I just think they're too bright.
Okay, we can lower them, but I've got a lot of positive feedback. That's all I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I don't mind the location of the lights. I just think for a residential building, it's just too much.
Yeah, we can lower it a little bit, sure.
Those are basically my comments.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. Mr. Strickland?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I personally, excuse me, I really like the appearance of phase one. I think it adds to the entrance to Tremont on West 14th Street. But I would like further explanation in terms of the use. And is phase one being used as a Airbnb currently?
Yes, all 8 units are in Airbnb. What we've done, and I can give you a long explanation on this. And we did meet with well, I won't get into all that. But our first building is in University Circle, and part of the issue is we were wondering, these are small, as you know, but they're very small units. They're 460 square feet. And there are 7 rooms in that 460 square feet. So you kind of have to see it, but it's really creative. But it's different, and it's not like anything else that's been in the city. So we started out in University Circle with Airbnbs, not knowing whether this small unit is best to be used as an Airbnb, is best to be used as an apartment, or is best to be used as a condo. So we started out with the Airbnb with the idea they're very easily convertible to apartments to go to the next step. So we've run that building for a year now, and we've now taken We've now taken 3 of the units and made them long-term apartment buildings of the University Circle one. We're now testing to see how this works together with the Airbnb. We wanted to have 4 and 4, but the Airbnb was leased. And so now we're going through the experiment of half apartments, half Airbnbs on that other building, on the first building. This building in Tremont has only been there for about, I think it's been open 3 months now. So we don't have enough feedback to decide whether we should start transferring some of those to long-term. The one thing I will say, we met with the block club, and I got very positive feedback for several reasons. One is this location is not residential, zone residential. This location is zone commercial. It also is not in a residential neighborhood. So if somebody's staying there, it isn't like some of the problems that we have been having, it's some of the people talked about, is on the residential street, if a homeowner, is one of their units, it can be a problem if there's a party or whatever on the street. And that seems to be the biggest issue with the block party. They like this in general because, number one, it's not in a residential district. It's away from the residential district. And also, there's small units. So if somebody's going to have an Airbnb, you're not going to have 15 people to have a party in a 460 square foot space. So they're conducive to the Airbnb without the party or troubling aspect. And that's worked out very well. The other part of it is I have hired a professional management company for the Airbnb and not a homeowner's thing. And as far as the economics are concerned, if you go on the website, it may look like it's going to be real profitable, but to be with the revenue sharing with the company that we hired, which is a professional company in Tremont West, likes them, but it's so far for the first 3 months, it isn't enough to tell, and there could be a ramp up, but it's been pretty equivalent to leasing it out for 1 year as an apartment. So the economics are not different. They're very similar. It's just a matter of what's the best use for the building. And operationally, it's actually been rather interesting. I don't know how much of this you want to know, but it's been rather interesting because when we have the Airbnb, if they stay 2 or 3 nights and then leave, then cleaners go into them, and all the units look real well because there's people cleaning them and looking at them. If there's any damage, the repair is done. So they're maintained very well, is what I'm saying. I know you can't see that from the outside, but on the inside, that's also a positive. It's not like, a 1 year lease where if somebody is not a good tenant, you're stuck with them for the year, so to speak. But that's been another positive to it. But as far as the long term, how this is going to turn out, I think it's dependent upon the community. Some of the communities, some of the feedback I got after the block party was very interesting. I mean, block club. It was very interesting because some people came up and said, "Oh, I didn't even know it was an Airbnb." Another person said, "Oh, this is great. I can now have my child when they come in to visit me, stay at a nice place." That was also positive. Some other people that said they stay in Airbnbs like 30 times a year, and this is very conducive. So in spite of some of I think the issues that have been brought up probably are more Airbnb in the city defining how they should operate in that. But I
Thank
think we've done a pretty good job managing them, so.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I
Thank
just
you.
want to get us back
Long
on track.
explanation. So did you have to get any type of variance in order to operate as an Airbnb for the first phase in Tremont?
No, the company, Arriva is the name of the company. They filed with the city, they did all the registrations and everything, and they paid the taxes and, everything with the city. So they've done all that, it's registered, and, that's why I hired them. They know more about it than I do.
The same model for the second phase.
The second phase, if the community is this upset, I don't know how to deal with it. Most of the community is basically saying it's positive. There is Tremont West and other people, I think, that are having more trouble with, and it's not an issue here, but it's how do you manage Airbnbs citywide? and how do they, it's a new product and it's kind of like the scooters downtown. And it needs to be thought through. And obviously we would obey any laws that are done. But as far as this project, I am looking at it from a marketing standpoint and saying what is best, for the community. What's best for University Circle may be different than Tremont. So
So I think we need to get this, I appreciate the full explanation and, it's very helpful. I know there's a lot of discussion on Airbnb, goods and bads, being an avid person who stays in one, but also having issues on my own personal street with them. So I want to get us back on track to stay focused on the use of the facility and the architectural character of the facility, since that's our purview of this meeting. So we truly appreciate the explanation because that helps with the context. Mr. Strickland, did you have any other questions?
No, Madam Chair, I just, that was a little longer explanation than.
I'm sorry.
But it is very helpful, and I wondered what, quite frankly, our jurisdiction was and our responsibility was with regard to the issues that were raised by Tremont West. But
I think
comments would be generally positive with regard to the ingenuity and the imagination with coming up with this type of a use. I think the marketplace benefits from this type of product on the market, and I would be in favor of approving this second phase. Thank you.
One question that I have related to that, and if we can keep it a little bit briefer, that we'd appreciate it. Are you is this an R1 or an R2? Are you building this, as you said, are you building it under the building code under a permanent resident R2 that's shared exit for over 3 units, or are you registering this as an R1 as a transient housing?
Dan, can you help with that?
Let me double check.
And are they both approved uses within this area? I'm assuming this is I don't have the zoning map in front of me to know, is this site approved for a residential use, R1, R2? And that might be, yes, that would be for you, Dan, also.
Yes. As Rick mentioned, this is a commercial district with an urban form overlay with a permitted use of residential.
I would encourage you, obviously, I think it's a creative use of the site. I think it's a challenging site, but you've tried to maximize what you can do. But I strongly encourage you to talk to your community in Tremont West in more detail about the use. Obviously, each organization has its own understanding of the overall community and what can fit or not, and really want to make your project thrive and be accepted by the general community. So from our side, our purview, does it fit the use and does it fit the historical character is what I like to try to reframe and get the Landmarks Commission really focused on, because that's what we can comment on related to if it's going to be an Airbnb. I think that really needs to be discussed in more detail with Tremont West to make sure that revision of use works well within the community. If this is going to be rented or a transient use like an Airbnb. So with that being said, Ms. Gergonis, did you have additional feedback on the architectural character or the use of this?
I apologize to add more to your conversation. I just wanted to make sure that I stated that, the problem with this is not the way that it looks. We understand that this is a little bit outside of what you guys normally consider because it is a newer issue, but it is one that is continually arising in the community. And the community is not mostly in favor of this being used as an Airbnb full time. So that I would like to make clear that is not the case. And also, it's not about whether or not Tremont West likes Airbnbs or the community, but it's how they are regulated under the code and that they are seeking a 15-year tax abatement and whether or not that is the intent, because that is not going to be the use as Mr. Marin had said previously, and also we don't understand how something can get approved without knowing its full use if Mr. Marin isn't sure about it being used as a full-time Airbnb or not. Because under the code, as it's stated, you are not allowed to have short-term rentals with the occupancy permit that he has for more than 90 days at a time. And if you look at the reviews even, it's been more than 90 days and it's being used consistently as an Airbnb full-time. Thank you.
Thank you for that addition. I think that's helpful for context. Other questions or comments on the project from the commission? Ms. Bailey? Before we go to your comments again, Ms. Bailey, Mr. Sir, could you answer how are you registering this project as an R1 or an R2? Are you saying this is full-time residents or are you saying this is transient?
This is an R2.
So permanent, primarily permanent in nature, so under 90 days for renting.
This does get into a zoning question because this is not in one of the 8 primary residential districts of the city of Cleveland. This is located in a local retail business district. So the moratorium on ARBs is related to the 8 districts. So
Finish your thought.
So the limiting lodging in residential district does not apply to this property because it's not in one of the 8 districts that are limited.
Okay. Do we have feedback from our legal team on that comment?
Madam Chair, I actually couldn't hear most of what Daniel stated because the audio was breaking up. But I don't have any independent comments at this point, and I would be hesitant to provide any. I would take anything under advisement, but I think we're steering a little farther away from the commission's purview here.
Okay. So,
And well, just to add, and Rick mentioned it, the operator did receive a permit to operate at this location. So it fell under that scrutiny.
And I don't think this is for this committee. I did have an attorney look up the legislation for the city. I had 2 attorneys look it up. I have a 5-page letter here, but their conclusion is that because it's zoned commercial, forget the language, local retail business, we are in line with the law. So I'll just leave it at that. I don't want to make this a legal discussion.
And I would like to take the advice of our legal team here that we need to reframe our conversation and focus on to the architectural character. But I would like Mr. Pettit's feedback since your hand is up. Go ahead, Mr. Pettit.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to say that I think all of this discussion about use is pertinent to our discussion of this development. But I agree with our counsel that we can't adjudicate the use in this forum here today. That's up to the building department. That's up ultimately perhaps to the Board of Zoning Appeals. This still has to go through zoning review and building and housing. So I don't think we can solve that today. Our purview is generally not with use. We're here to review environmental changes to historic buildings and historic districts. And I think that should be our focus. And I think we can comment on the use, I think, but I think we have to leave it up to other divisions of the city to determine if this is appropriate for this site and this neighborhood. That's all.
Thank you. Okay, so with all of that advice, questions or comments from the commission related to the architectural character of the building? Yeah, if not, would someone like to put forward a motion? Go ahead, Mr. Strickland.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I propose, I mean, I would move to approve the certificate of appropriateness for this project as presented with the consideration by the developer to look at the exterior lighting and possibly not reduce the number of fixtures, but reduce the lighting level to have it be more appropriate on the street on West 14th.
Thank you. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Before the second, I want a second. Can you add on Mr. Strickland on your motion, also to go to staff to the rear part of the building, whatever use that they let the local design review and staff to let them know what use they're gonna have for the rear part of the building.
Yeah, I'll add that to my motion. Thank you.
And then I'll second.
Thank you. Ms. Bailey, so we have a motion. We have a second. Further discussion? All right, Mr. Pettit, please call roll and announce the results.
Ms. Anderson,
No.
Ms. Bailey,
Yes.
Mr. Bonezzi,
No.
Mr. Dryer,
No.
Mr. Santora,
Yes.
Mr. Strickland,
Yes.
Mr. Tarasik,
Yes.
Ms. Trott.
Yes, with the use of an R2 permanent apartment use.
Madam Chair, the motion passes 5-3.
Excellent. Thank you for announcing that. We look forward to seeing how your project progresses and strongly encourage you to continue your conversations with Tremont West to align your use with how you're registering the building. So good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on to our second applicant located at 3911 John Avenue, Selective Demolition, Renovation, and Addition. Welcome, Ms. Marinucci. Please tell us about your project.
Hold on one second. I'm trying to get my phone to do. Hold on. Can I have 1 second, Julie?
Absolutely. Would you like us to move to the next?
Yeah, if you
application?
could. I was anticipating being later in the agenda, so I don't
That's
have my
okay. I
computer
think the
open. I looked on
agenda
my phone.
was revised a little bit, so we'll move on to the next one.
Okay, thanks so
Carl.
much.
No problem. All right, we'll move on to our third applicant located at 3775 West 33rd Street, Renovation.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair and committee for hearing me out and taking a look at this. My name is Kyle Webster. I'm the owner and, I have done most of the design and construction, cleaning. So a little bit of intro background. This was a historic storefront building located on West 33rd Street, somewhat depressed area, which I purchased about a year ago to use and convert into a house for myself, into like an artist loft type structure. using the lower level as just a, workshop and garage, and then creating a living space on the top level. I guess we could show the picture of what I am trying to accomplish. I was not aware of the historic approval process. I began addressing a disrepaired roof on the front half of the building, and through discussing and sort of planning with an architect and an engineer, myself as well, I'm an engineer, we decided this was, from a sort of a practical use standpoint, and this was the best path forward to address the roof that was in quite a bit of disrepair, the original plane. So we decided to construct this new roof addition to address the old disrepaired roof, so that it could be built in place while leaving that one tied into the structure, which had the added benefit of added light in a residentially zoned building that was obviously originally a commercial space. In the area, the feedback I've gotten from everybody I've talked to about what I'm doing has been very, very positive. So yeah, this is the basic plan. Obviously, I got probably too much information in some of this, but I wasn't sure if people went over that beforehand. Project location. So I'm on West 33rd, just south of Archwood, near Denison area. There's the original building as I purchased it. It was in quite a bit of disrepair when I got it. It had been sitting vacant for a long time, as you can see from the dead vines. The basin had water in it. I mean, there was water and rats, and it was an absolute mess. And so yeah, I mean, I started construction, which was a poor judgment call on my part. I kind of knew the City Hall was closed, and I knew they were still obviously operating with some capacity, but I went ahead and wanted to address the roof that was in disrepair underneath, and stop work when I was asked to, and have been seeking approval since, and I've gone through the design review process in Near West. A bit of urgency as far as hoping for approval and a plan forward, as obviously like I need to get it finished up and weathered in, and have it tarped and try and keep it from damage. But so the new roof structure adds about 4 feet to the original roof line, keeps the same slope. This would be the interior. The added height, another factor was if I added that extra few feet of height, that gave me the ability to have a loft, a partial second floor could be built into the space. And as I said, the lighting, in a residential space, it was basically unusable in my opinion, without having lighting. So these were some examples I found as the material I was hoping to use for that roof addition was like a black metal siding. And so these were some of the examples that I found for to kind of show the mating, the two materials together, and the kind of appeal of the look. So I did look into, after being sort of giving some insight by the commissioner. I did do some research, read up on the MPS reports when they designated the area as historic. I believe one was from the 80s, another one from the 90s, where they did list the area. There was no, like, as they go through the buildings and sort of talk about the significance, there was no, mention whatsoever in either of those reports about the building that I'm, added the roof addition to. This was something, again, in sort of doing some research. This was from the nps.gov website on preservation. Just trying to do some research, understand what is appropriate and should be compatible but differentiated from the historic building when talking about rooftop additions. And again, it's on the same website, designing a new addition in a manner that makes clear what's historic and what is new. So this, I don't know if this for sure is a roof addition. It looks to be one. This is across from West Side Market. I'm sure all of you are familiar with this area, and it looks, again, maybe someone else is more familiar with this, with being on the board, but it looks to be, between the two brick buildings that definitely looks to be a roof addition, finished in what appears to be like a hardy board material. So yeah, it's a dark gray metal siding for the roof addition, and then a black, for a basic casement style Henderson window, Fibrex material. Yeah, I just took a few. I assume most of you are familiar with the area, familiar with the city. I just took a couple street view shots, just kind of showing this is not a high visibility commercial area. This is zoned residential. It's sort of a mix of older buildings and a few buildings that I'm not sure when that apartment and Denison High School were built, but I assume in the 70s or 80s. There's a few photos again, to kind of show what I took on and sort of trying to sort of renovate and clean up. A lot of this was just cleaning and demoing and trying to make this a useful space, and that's kind of where I'm at with it, trying to get a plan forward and approval so I can weather this in for winter. I'm really focused just on the work on the rooftop for now. As I'm in a tricky spot, just trying to weather that in, and I did this in such a way I'm not covering over any of the face whatsoever, and really any of the brickwork.
Are these pictures presentation or decent? Added
There were more of I added them in case Carl was helpful in supplying these to me. To give an idea of, but
Okay. Well, excellent. Oh, go ahead.
yeah, no, that's kind of what I've got for now.
Okay, excellent. Well, we appreciate the presentation. Is there feedback from the local community?
Thank you.
Madam Chair, this was reviewed by the Near West Design Review Committee yesterday. They approved it with two conditions. That the applicant align the windows / mullions on the front with the lines of the trim below the front windows. And the second condition was that he provide cut sheets for the hardy board material to staff. But otherwise it was approved as presented.
Okay, thank you. Do you have questions or comments from the commissioners? I'd like to open the floor up to the commission for questions and comments. Go ahead, Mr. Strickland.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Don, could you provide a little explanation? I think this is a great photo to be looking at, but the Design Review Committee made what suggestion with regard to the window mullions on the panel below?
They want the windows, as I understand it, they want the windows themselves and the mullions to line up with the lines below the windows. So basically, so that the windows line up with the bulkhead somehow. And I don't know if that's a matter of redesigning the bulkhead or just reconfiguring the windows.
Yeah, again, I can probably answer that, you know, because we discussed it yesterday. Yeah, one of the architects brought that up on the committee, just basically redesigning the trim below the windows so that, you know, it's symmetric and uniform with the, you know, the window dividers, you know, as most storefront type buildings would be. So pretty basic.
So the battens below the windows in the hardy board panel align with the mullions above? Is that what they're saying?
With the ones with the window panels. So
With the
nothing to
window
do,
mullions
the
above.
above ones is actually part of the historic original storefront windows, as you saw in those you know, historic photos at the end. So he was just really referring to the trim work, you know, between the hardy panels below the windows is what he was talking about. So if you go one or more, yeah, right there, you can see. So, and because I asked him to clarify that, and yeah, it's nothing to do with the ones above, but just that the trim work below matched the window panels. Was what he was discussing.
And you've agreed to that change?
Yeah. I just didn't have time to re-render it for the review today.
Oh, Madam Chair, I'll just add a comment that I am, in the strongest possible terms, commend this owner for rescuing this building. And I think that the Rooftop Edition is done tastefully. It does not disturb the historical fabric of the original building. And I'm strongly in favor of approving this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Strickland.
Thank you.
Mr. Santora?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I also want to commend the applicant here. I think rescuing this building and what they're proposing, it's great, and hats off to you. I have no issues with the windows if you've agreed to the modifications from the design review. My bigger concern is the addition portion of the building as it fronts the front facade of the building. So how do you have any details on how you're proposing to flash between the existing coping and the new structure that you're proposing?
Yeah, I mean, on so the front set back a little bit. I think there's about 3 or 4 inches of setback. And then I would flash, you know, kind of as close to the edge as you can without flashing over, you know, and caulking that to, you know, and then on the on the sides, there would be that flash would actually, it would cover about 1 flight of brick, you know, just to get, just to weatherproof it, you know, come from a practical standpoint. You know, so it would be like the bottom trim, to be, you know, the appropriate bottom trim material that's used with, you know, with the type of siding, and that would be, you know, kind of, you know, just trim so it's all, you know, kind of straight and looks appropriate. But yeah, on the front face and on those corner pylons, I mean, I would just kind of flash, you know, just over the edge, but not really covering as little, you know, brickwork as possible.
Okay. Do you feel that's going to be substantial enough? My concern is the covering of the stone capping coping on the front of the building, and just the new weight that's added with the addition right above that front facade. I would prefer to have seen the new addition pushed back behind the parapet, probably a foot or two, to give full relief. It would have made it a little bit better of a cleaner condition as well in order to cope. But
Yeah, no, I understand that from like an architectural standpoint. It was just kind of from a practical standpoint, there's just a lot of challenges with that. It's a lot more complicated of a build. You have water management than, in a small area, which is probably going to run through the interior of the structure and actually where the, because of the load bearing sort of standpoint, it actually stiffens that whole front face up as it's done. I'm not going to get into all those details, but there was some pretty practical sort of standpoints of doing it this way. Though I do understand what you're saying, and I noticed that was like a preferential way, for historic, additions. But at this point, especially, like there's just that's a substantial structural change. Like it would pretty much have to be rebuilt entirely.
well, I can understand that, but it is part of the process. You did build it without approval, so
I understand.
if that was the modification necessary, then that's what's necessary. I'm not saying it's huge. I can get behind what you're proposing as long as I think it's detailed correctly. And is that glass block that you have at the infill at the upper
It
level?
is, yeah.
Okay. Well, I guess that's okay. Yeah, that would just be my preference to see it pushed back, but I can get behind with what you're proposing.
Thank you, Mr. Santora. Mr. Monese?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Two things. One is to first commend you, the applicant, for taking a different approach to historic preservation. This personally aligns with like one of my mindsets, which is my love of a different way of thinking about historic things, which is that instead of trying to like kind of blend in with it, you completely separate yourself so that you read the two things in tandem and you can really tell what's historic and what's not. But also to bounce off of my fellow member, Mr. Santora, I do agree that there were like, given the conditions of the situation, we, can't change the past. So we are where we are, but there's a whole art form to very specific ways about detailing when you put a kind of very contemporary thing either inside or on top of a historic structure. The Europeans have a whole art form about doing it because that's their kind of favorite way to mitigate between new things and old things, because I won't get into my whole backstory of living in Europe. But regardless, I think that the ambitious nature of you to take on this project and kind of like save this admittedly kind of interesting commercial building that's now inside of a residential community that otherwise probably most people wouldn't have thought of to turn into a house is just very commendable. So I'm in very full support of you. Keep on going with your house. I also just love black. So otherwise, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Bonazzi. Ms. Bailey?
I just want to commend you for you converting this, saving it and converting this into a residential. And I like how you did the structural on the interior. Are you planning on keeping that as a exposed framing system as your final design, although you're not finished on the inside? Is that your plan of having it exposed framing?
Yeah, partially, yeah. There'll be some beams
like
and
the concept. Do you also have in the rear a patio in the back as well?
So with the raised deck, yeah, there's access to the back. The rear deck is actually an entirely different structure. It's all metal and actually a 3-inch concrete pad on the back half of the building. So yeah, that was the idea. Is there is a way, an access point, and that's kind of another project in itself, but yeah, no, there's access, so that could be used as a deck area.
Exterior decking.
Mhm.
Well, great job.
Thank you.
What you did. And I mean, I like what you did. I mean, you saved and you didn't disturb too much of the existing structure, but it's basically adding a new structure on top. But you still see the existing framing of the existing conditions. So I like what you did with this.
Thank you.
Great job.
Ms. Bailey, Ms. Anderson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, I have to applaud you for taking on this huge project. Most people would run away from it, and you really, are working hard at saving this very derelict building. I have to say, when I first saw the address, I was like a little puzzled. I knew it was off of Archwood. I didn't realize it was in part of the historic district. So I would imagine you had no idea that this was in a historic district when you.
Yeah, I knew Archwood was, but I again, that's on me. I didn't do my homework and realized that. No, I didn't realize this fell into that.
Yeah, I assume you didn't. It's not real obvious again by the address that it was in the district. Had you come to us beforehand, which I understand why you didn't. I probably would have been pretty adamant about having the addition orient towards the back of the building, so it could not be readily seen from the street. Because right now it's impossible not to see it.
Yeah.
I think something like this, we approve additions like this all the time, but we want to maintain the look and scale of the original one-story storefront, and this obviously takes it in a different direction. I'm gonna diverge from some of my colleagues here. I think with the addition, I would want to minimize the look of that addition so that the brick storefront kind of dominates your visual field, and the black creates such contrast that it's competing at least with the original brick storefront. So I would probably want to see something which diminishes that contrast, like maybe a cool gray or something that would blend in more with the sky as opposed to a stark black like that. And the windows, I'm glad that the upper windows are being maintained, those kind of transom style windows above. I would like to see the look of the windows give more deference to the original storefront. So, the black framing with the windows, I don't think it's a look that lends itself to a historic character of the building. So I guess I'm in disagreement with the local design review on that as well. I think that there should be a little more emphasis on the being able to see the articulation of the above windows, and maybe windows all the way across. The black frame and the lights in the center, it's just doesn't read consistently with the character of the building. So those are basically my comments, but I want to emphasize that I appreciate, all you're doing to, try to revitalize this building and make it your home.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. I'm just going to insert my comments. I think I align with everyone who said that I think this is a great, I commend you for taking this on because it's many people would turn away from the condition of the building. I do probably align a little bit more with Ms. Anderson and what Mr. Santora said. Typically, I like to have more definition between the historic and the new construction so that it's not overtaking the historic portion of the structure from at least from the front elevation. Because right now you see the difference because of the color, but you don't perceive the original structure as strongly as if it was set back at the front. I think the black is taking dominance over the existing structure also. I do like the contrast, but since the materials are so close to each other, that's probably my feedback too. If the structure was set back, I would like the darker color more because it would recede more, but right now, since it's aligned or almost flush with the front elevation, it's it's the most dominant feature now of the elevation. I would align with what Mr. Santora said is, the devil's in the details of how you're going to flash that front because of how tight you are, and really how you're going to do it over that existing sandstone cap, because obviously you're going to want to run the flashing to the front to get a good watertight connection because they are in the same plane, but they're not flush with each other. So how you detail that's going to be really important for the future of the health of your building. So I'd encourage you to really look at those and submit those to staff because and what color you select there, because some of the beauty is the very delicate sandstone details on this building, which make it so interesting. And how do you respect that, but also allow you to create a watertight, new structure? Here is just a really important detail that you need to pay attention to, and I would ask you to submit to staff with the color of flashing, assuming you do aluminum, flashing over that. What color are you going to choose? Is it going to be the dark color or a sandstone color? In this case, I may encourage you to look at a sandstone color so that at least you can still read the sandstone caps that are still there, but under the materials.
Okay.
Ms. Anderson, I see your hand still up. Did you have additional? Oh,
No,
Ms. Bailey,
I'm sorry, I just forgot to take it.
no problem. Ms. Bailey, I see your hand is still up. Did you have additional questions or comments?
No, sorry. No.
Not a problem. Other questions or comments from the commission? All right, if there are no other additional questions or comments, would someone like to make a motion?
I make a motion.
Go ahead.
The motion is to approve the design as presented.
Okay. Design as presented. Do we have a second?
This is Alan. I'll second.
Thank you. Do we have a second? Further discussion? I would ask for the condition to submit the flashing details at the front and the side of the second floor addition be submitted to staff with the color of that flashing. Do you approve, Ms. Bailey, adding that to your motion?
Yes, please add that to the motion.
Mr. Dryer, do you second that being added to the motion?
Yes.
Okay, so we have a motion, we have a second. Any further discussion? All right, Mr. Pettit, please call roll and announce the results.
Ms. Anderson,
No.
Ms. Bailey,
Yes.
Mr. Bonesi,
Yes.
Mr. Dryer,
Yes.
Mr. Santora,
Yes.
Mr. Strickland,
Yes.
Mr. Tarasik,
Yes.
Ms. Trot.
Oh, you cut out, Don. I assumed you call my name. I'd say no.
Thank you. Madam Chair, the motion passes 6 votes to 2.
Excellent, thank you. Like we said, thank you for taking on such a commendable project here. We look forward to seeing you complete your project.
Thank you very much. Appreciate everyone's time.
Thank you. We will now move back to our second application, which is located at 3911 John Avenue, Selective Demolition, Renovation, and Addition.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for your flexibility earlier when I wasn't quite ready. My name's Antonia Marinucci. I'm the architect for this project located on John Avenue in Ohio City. What we have is a single existing 2-family home. It's a workman's cottage, probably 1860s. And the current owners bought it in February and are would like to pursue this renovation and addition to convert the property back to its single family use for their family to move into. In our historic research for the property, there wasn't a ton beyond the Sanborn maps. It was worth noting that it did not appear that there was a front porch in the original massings of the home. There is currently a front porch that you'll see shortly that seems to be added mid 20th century. Next slide, please. So this is the house as it exists today. Like I said, it's a pretty nondescript workman's cottage. The front porch that I believe is about, mid 20th century is kind of like the most defining feature at the moment. It steps back in multiple massings towards the rear, pretty typical of the Ohio City cottage. And it currently has a front door and a little side entrance. Both of which the massing of the house seems to be, beyond that front porch, seems to be pretty consistent with the Sanborn maps back to the late 19th century. Next slide, please. From an interior perspective, because a good portion of this project we are asking for permission to demolish, it doesn't have there's nothing remaining from a historic standpoint. Everything has been modified. It's not the worst I've seen in Ohio City, but it's not in great condition. Structurally speaking, the floor plates are insufficiently spanned and insufficiently spaced, at least in the first floor joist that we can see. Lots of like 2x6s at 24 inches on center for living spaces, some turned on the incorrect axis. It's basically just kind of the typical story for a lot of these Ohio City cottages where they've been modified so many times, but they really aren't. There's nothing architecturally speaking, and they're also structurally compromised in many areas. There's areas of missing or damaged subfloor. The foundation, however, was previously reinforced with kind of like a buttress. It's an existing brick foundation that was buttressed by CMU, and it's actually in pretty fair condition. So a majority of the project, the back half of the house that we would like to demolish, we're actually trying to retain the foundation and work with that footprint in some extent. Next slide, please. So here I'm starting to delineate like where exactly we want to kind of demolish and where we want to restore from a massing standpoint. Essentially what we want to do is retain the front third of the house so that the front facing gable is the restored workman's cottage. So the frontage on John Avenue is consistent with the original massing of the house. We are proposing a we're tearing down the front porch as it exists today and rebuilding an L-shaped front porch that we feel is a bit more compatible with the age of the home and a bit more appropriate to the district, instead of like the mid 20th century aesthetic that it currently has, as well as correcting the 2/3 window pattern on the front facade because there was not a front entry indicated on the old Sanborn maps. We feel confident that the kind of side entry point, which we're proposing to be in the same location as the one is today, was likely the appropriate front door. Next slide, please. So looking more broadly at the elevations, obviously what we're proposing is going to end up being a larger house than what exists today. So I hope you can see in this east elevation, there's that red dashed line kind of delineating what's to stay towards the street front and what will be newly constructed towards the rear. And you can see the outline dash of the existing massing kind of ghosted on top of that. So we are clearly trying to build a larger house. The current house is about 1,600 square feet, and they will yield just over 2,000 square feet of usable space in the new home, which will obviously be more conducive for them to start their family, which is their plan for this house, and get more longevity out of it. The other things of note kind of from the massing standpoint is we are trying to step back the massing in a similar way to some of the feedback we had got from the local committee in previous iterations of the design was that it felt a little too massive and overwhelming. So we're trying to step back to the rear, even though that's not visible from the John Avenue frontage, but we felt that that was still contextual to the neighborhood and the style of home. That little rear massing that kind of sticks out is, as you'll see in the plans shortly, like a mudroom breezeway. They would love to, at some point in the future, though not part of this proposal, build an attached garage at the end of that breezeway. But it's not cost feasible right now, so it's not part of this proposal. Next slide, please. Again, looking at it in plan, so you can sort of see how that massing relates to their floor plan. They'll yield a 4-bedroom home at the end of this, which is what they would like. Next slide, please. And then I wanted to just be very transparent and clear on how we're basically proposing the changes in the massing. Like I said, the late 19th century mapping shows the pretty consistent massing to what's there today. Again, showing the kind of delineation of the part of the gable we're keeping, and then how the new porch and the new gable massing wraps around that gable. Next slide, please. For materiality, they would like to propose hardy board residing on the entire structure. It's currently, I believe, aluminum, but it has several layers. So we're not totally sure what is underneath. If the cladding on that front gable is able to be restored, that would probably be the first preference. But the rest of the house, the newer constructed portions, will be in hardy board with a 4-inch exposure. They're going to be doing aluminum clad windows in bronze. We're using Pella as the basis of design. The roof, we're showing barkwood brown, shingled roof. The basis of design for the front door is currently shown as a Therma-Tru fiberglass 3/4 light in the driftwood finish. Like I said, we're trying to, with the porch, create a pretty simplistic front porch that is more compatible and appropriate, keeping in mind that there really wasn't a porch on the house originally, but understanding that it's definitely additive to the street front and for their use. So the 3 colors we've chosen is natural choice for that front massing. The homeowners really wanted to play with contrasting the historic with the new construction, while also hoping that the new construction recedes a little bit and letting that front piece be a bit more kind of like a bit more of the showpiece in the front as it's later, and then using pewter green on the rear portion of the house, and then accenting with mindful gray on the porch to sort of just have a really nice subtle neutral earth tone palette. I think that's all.
Excellent, thank you. Feedback from the local committee.
Good morning, commission members, and Donna Gorgonis with Ohio City Incorporated and Tremont West again. Hi. I don't have much to say about this because it was unanimously approved as presented, so thank you.
Excellent, thank you for that feedback. Open up the floor to the commission for questions and comments. Ms. Bailey? Ms. Bailey, did you have feedback or was your hand still up from the previous presentation?
Ms. Bailey, you are muted.
Thanks. One of the comment I was writing down about the railing is the railing is new, and what's the material and the height?
You asked what is the material of the new portion and the height?
The railing.
Oh, the railing height. That's drawn at 28 inches.
And the
And
material.
the material will be, it's being proposed as hardy. Hardy material. I think the handrail and the spindles will do in real wood, but the columns in the detailing will be in hardy board, flat hardy board, smooth finish, I should say. For all of those details, the rake board, the corner boards, the lap siding, all the porch elements that are, you know, surface applied, except for the handrails that will be real wood painted.
And the window, are you trying the material of the window, and is the windows going to be similar to the profile of the original windows that
Well,
was
it's interesting.
demolished?
Yes, so it's interesting because we actually had two typologies on the house. We had the clear double hung windows on the front as shown, and then the back does switch to a 2/2. And it was a little bit difficult for me to discern. I don't know that the workman's cottage would have necessarily had 2/2, but I also didn't have strong evidence of any descript window style. So I'm kind of going off of what I had on the house, which was the double hung facing that front and kind of the 2/2. We've interpreted that here as a casement style window to help with egress and kind of just how they want the windows to function. But aesthetically speaking, those are the two languages that we have in the existing house.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair, you're muted.
Thank you. No wonder nobody was responding. Questions or comments from the commission? Ms. Anderson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to mention that this was one of the first houses that I listed and sold back in the 80s. And I think it was a 3-family at that time. I support this. I think it's a very elegant solution to, adding square footage to, this modest home. I think I have a slight preference for eliminating the front porch, but, it's been there a long time. So I at least the front section of the front porch, not the side section. So it's acceptable. But yeah, I think this is, a great improvement to the street, and I look forward to seeing the finished product.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. Other questions or comments? Mr. Strickland?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, I want to commend the applicant and the architects for the thoughtful treatment of this proposed addition to this workman's cottage. It's a very ambitious project, and I think that it, as Ms. Anderson said, it's going to greatly enhance the appearance of this structure on the street. And I'd be in favor of approving it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Strickland. Mr. Santora?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to echo what everybody said. I think it's a great job, a great project. My question is in regards to some of the colors. Did you, when you were looking at the color palette, did you examine any differential trim colors? It seems like the trim colors for both bodies of the new proposed and the existing are going to match the body color of the rest of the house. Did you examine differential colors to help make the kind of trim pop out, especially around some of the more detailed elements around the windows and the boards?
Yes, and this was a discussion point with the local committee. We kind of landed, I think the committee landed that they didn't, this wasn't a deal breaker for them. So we decided to present kind of what the aesthetic hopes were from the client standpoint. It is intended, well, basically we just wanted to reinterpret kind of that three color palette in a little bit of a different way. What we discussed, I think Doug Wall on the local committee, his suggestion I think was to do a contrasting trim or reintroduce maybe that mindful gray color onto the rake and the window trim on that front historic portion that we're restoring. No one seemed opposed to the more monochromatic look at the rear, which was going to be new construction. The client that would be agreeable to them. So if that's something that feels like a sticking point for you guys, that is something that they would happily do.
No, I was just wondering the thoughts behind it. And did you examine, do you have in here the west facade so that we can see the transition? Because it seems like the new construction and existing house to remain will be in plane. So I'm wondering how that color transition is going to be handled. Is there
It will all everything kind of oh, that is a good question. That is a good question. I have not thought of that. Thank you for I'm like, it's very obvious on the east side, but you are right on the west side. That's something I'll have to discuss with them and be clear about in my drawings. Thank you for catching that.
Because I think it works very well. And
I mean, I
like
think maybe I guess it could be as simple as putting in a vertical delineation kind of between that existing and proposed, or I'm sorry, the old and new, and transitioning the color. We are up against another house. That's that western facade. We are only a few feet from the neighbor, so it's not very visible from the street front at that point.
Okay. Yeah, I was
Thank you.
just
I'll
wondering
have to
how
figure out an
handle
elegant way.
that was all I had. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Santora. I'm just going to interject mine because I started saying them, but I was on mute. I think this is a great project. I think it's an ambitious addition. My only feedback would be I'm personally not the biggest fan of the mixed windows across your addition. I understand that on the existing building, if those are the two, the standard double hung, it's on the front elevation, but the 2/2 and the double hung on the addition, to me is a little bit of a mixed messaging. I prefer you to pick one or the other. If the if the 2/2 is desired for use and the aesthetic, I would recommend changing, those 4 double hungs to the 2/2 also, so that at least your style is consistent across the entire addition, versus mixing it in that location too.
I think that that's a great suggestion. I think that would be fine to switch to the 2/2 style, so it's consistent.
And then Mr. Santora hit the question I had about the transition on the west elevation. So I think your comment of potentially introducing a vertical transition board to allow to accept the 2 different colors would help probably resolve that also. And the colors, although I don't mind the monochromatic, I think your subtlety of colors between your mindful gray and your neutral choice, it's a little small on my screen, I think that's the name of it, it could be a nice reinterpretation and really highlight the character of this, varied and just interesting structure and how you're respecting that existing structure and its details. Those were all
Thank
and that was my feedback. Ms. Anderson, I see your hand is still up. Do you have additional questions or comments?
Yes, I do, Madam Chair. Thank you. My preference would be to add the trim color as suggested by Doug Wall. And part of that is, this neighborhood was substantially rental property for many, many years. And, the landlords would come in and paint and, they didn't want to get fussy with, trim and details. So they just did the monochromatic thing, house after house. And that little bit of trim is the kind of detail that I think speaks owner occupant. It says, this is a simple house and we want to keep some simple embellishment, but we want to show that there is, some transitions here, some interest, something to catch the eye. So my preference would be with Doug Wall and rake trim, maybe around the windows to take that gray. I'm not asking to introduce another color. It's a subtle difference, but I think it would really enhance the property. So thank you very much. That's my comment.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. Other questions or comments from the commission? Would someone like to put forward a motion? Mr. Strickland?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would propose approval of the project as presented with the change of the trim color on the existing structure to the gray and substituting the windows on the addition so that they're the consistent 2/2 casement windows. Thank you.
Thank you. So a motion with a condition. Do we have a second?
Madam Chair, this is Anthony Santoral, second.
Thank you, Mr. Santora. We have a motion. We have a second. Further discussion? All right. Mr. Pettit, please call roll and announce the results.
Ms. Anderson,
Yes.
Ms. Bailey,
Yes.
Mr. Bonesi,
Yes.
Mr. Dryer,
Yes.
Mr. Santora,
Yes.
Mr. Strickland,
Yes.
Mr. Tarasik,
Yes.
Ms. Trott.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. We look forward to seeing the project move forward. That concludes our certificates of appropriateness. We'll now move on to our concept plan reviews. We'll start with our first applicant located at 4807 Lorraine Avenue, Urban Community School, new construction of a mixed-use building. Could the applicant please use
Madam Chair,
oh, go ahead.
before we start, I just want to point out that the next two items are related. They're basically the same development. We saw this on June 24th of 2021. They're returning with the new construction again, still as a concept plan, but they're asking for action today on the demolition of the existing building.
All right, thank you.
Yes, good morning. This is Christine Raymond from Casmar Architects. I'm representing Urban Community School today. John Haggerty from Urban Community School, I believe, is also on Tom Gill wanted to be here, but he is attending a funeral at this moment, so he might pop in if possible, but today we'll be representing these two cases. And thank you, Don, for the explanation. That is correct. We have two cases before you today. The first, again, is just concept. We want to continue to work with the commission on the proposed new design for the site. And then the second is we are requesting demolition approval for the existing building. It has continued to deteriorate even as recently as since we last saw you, and the danger and hazard concerns continue to escalate. So the demolition contractor has already applied for a demolition permit in hopes that we can gain approval for demolition from this body. The Councilman McCormick does support the demolition, and the Ohio City Design Review Committee has approved demolition. So that being said, I'll go with the first. We've included similar documents, just what's on the screen as to what you've had before, as well as some updated information. So if we want to go through the concept plans, we can do that first. After the last meeting, we took another look at the existing conditions of the north and east walls of the building to determine if there was any possible way we could shore those up and incorporate them into the current design. And again, our engineers and the masonry restoration contractors continue to tell us that it is not possible to shore the walls up. They are not stable. The brick has no ties back to the existing structure, and some brick has already fallen within the last 2 months, and the brick continues to pull away because there is no attachment. So that's the great concern here with the demolition request and the urgency of that. So after further study of looking at that, the existing conditions, we thought about, well, how does that impact the design? And knowing that the existing walls would require complete reconstruction, we believe that a design that is more respectful to the current edge of Lorraine Avenue would yield a more pleasing result for the campus. And so in taking a look at the newer buildings, which have, the Metro Health Center and the Urban Squash filled in the missing teeth that were, car lots and vacant lots for much of the time of this site, recent history of this site. So we continue to believe that a design that respects the current edge of Lorraine Avenue is the preference. So with that being said, I'll go through the concept plans, and the footprint of the building is the same as what you've seen in the past. In June, the building is the same size. Where we have made modifications are along Lorraine Avenue and mainly on the street level plan. If you go to the next slide, please. The basement concept here is different. I will note it's just we're looking at a full basement to provide more usable space since the campus is filling in all of the available site area. So we are just FYI looking for a full basement. So the street level plan that you see before you, we have taken and studied this a bit more and revised it to enhance the Lorraine Avenue Street entrance. We were able to pull back the required fire stair that's centered to the building. We pulled that to the south away from the entrance to provide more active space along Lorraine Avenue. So the retail space to the west, which is to the left of stair B, that retail space has been increased by 115 square feet. And you can see that you can now come through the Lorraine Avenue entrance and walk past the open to below area, which will give you views down into the office space below in the basement level to gain access to the community room from that center entrance. There will be visibility from the sidewalk through the open to below space and into that walkway, we intend to have internal glass walls surrounding that space to provide visibility. Additional tweaks to this plan were required, which are just related to the interior layouts due to the stair shifting and the retail space growing. The internal plan has been modified a bit. The program remains the same. The size of the community room remains the same. And this office space that you see is replacing office space that is currently in the existing school, and it will give them an increased amount of administrative spaces. They've outgrown the space in the current school, and then now they'll be able to use current school space for education functions. Next slide, please. The next floor up is very similar. The only changes here are due to the stair relocation and the wall changes along Lorraine Avenue. Program remains the same. Next floor, please. So at the top level, this plan did change. We were able to pull the north and east walls inboard on this third story per, good feedback from the commission about delineating the top level from the lower 2 stories. So now we've doubled the recess and increased the depth of the cornice. I think it went from about 18 inches to 2.5 feet or nearly 3 feet. So we have been able to create a larger offset between floors. The stair also has moved on this plan, obviously, to align with the floor below. The boardroom was reconfigured, but remains about the same size. Next slide. Okay, so the roof plan is this is just an updated roof plan because of the deeper cornice that we've shown. Next slide. So the exterior views have been updated to match those plans. The main change here that you're seeing is that we have pushed that third story back and created greater separation to allow the masonry of the first 2 stories at the east end of the new project to be more in proportion with the current building that we're requesting to be removed. Next slide. Minor detail that we have edited and revised here on the north elevation, the window heads above the 2nd story windows, we now are showing a precast detail with sloped tops. The existing window hoods that are on the current building have a angular slope to them. So we have revised the window heads here accordingly. And again, this is a concept plan approval. So we welcome your feedback for this. And I think the next couple of views are just additional exterior view. Yes. So this is the view looking from the west to the east. The existing urban community school is located on the right. We will be proposing to remove a portion of that existing school to make way for the 2-story structure in the center there. So your packet includes the documents that were submitted prior, the existing building assessment report. What we have updated is a new letter from the structural engineer based on the site visit in August with regards to the investigation of the brick conditions. So with that, I would welcome your questions or comments.
Thank you for the presentation. Do we have feedback from the local committee?
Good morning again, Madam Chair and members of the commission. Thanks again for having me, Donna Gregonis, Neighborhood Development Director for Tremont West and Ohio City Incorporated Development Corporations. So This did come before the local design review committee, and I wanted to make note that, you know, the community at large is very for the investment that UCS is continually doing in our neighborhood. And they always are very apt to work with us, including members of the community, to continually improve their product that they're designing and work with the needs of the community. But I wanted to make note that this was reviewed only as the demolition and not the new proposed building. And I know this is atypical because typically the committee likes to have a fully thought out design for the most part before approving demolition of a contributing building on Lorraine, which is an important corridor. So this was unanimously approved to be demolished. And I think the condition of the building as it stands and the hazardous nature of it is the reason why it was approved, which again, I just want to make note that that is out of the ordinary for this corridor and typically not approved, but this was unanimously approved. But the new building was not voted on, so that would not be considered in the motion that they made, just the demolition. Thank you.
Thank you for that feedback. We'll now open the floor to the commission for questions and comments. Ms. Bailey, thanks for volunteering to start us off. Go ahead. Ms. Bailey,
Ms. Wayman, thank you for showing the presentation of your proposed project. Is the project going to be breaking up into stages, meaning are they going to be broken up into different stages and different times when you're going to do doing it into construction phases, or they're all going to be done in all at one time? Could you explain that?
Of course. The construction of the new building would be all in one phase. That is the intention, that it will be submitted for as a single building or addition to the existing school, because it will be connected to the school. So the only phasing would be the immediate demolition, and then, you know, the design obviously is not 100% complete, and we don't have a building permit for the new construction. So then in the meantime, during that phase, the lot will be filled in, protected, there'll be grass and made safe and nice for the school in the meantime. But the construction of the, you know, new building, new construction would all be one phase is the intention.
Can I see the site plan? Because I'm seeing other building as well, but all
Okay.
right. So it's the green building, and the rest of it is just other entities.
The yellow, everything in yellow would be the new construction. There is a portion of the existing school that will need to be removed to facilitate that. What you see in green is simply, that's more for our team, in that that's an interior renovated area. That green space is currently the office area for the Urban Community School Development Office, which is going to move into the yellow so that they can use that green space as early childhood, indoor play space, educational function. So that's what you're looking at with the green. That just happens to exist in the current building. The new yellow is going to be connected to the existing school.
Okay, so the new construction is in the yellow.
Correct.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Mrs. Strickland. Thank you, Ms. Bailey. Mr. Strickland.
Thank you.
Questions or comments?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think the concept plan, the new design is very handsome building and gives a nod to some of the detailing to the existing structure that is being taken down. I think that I saw some notes from the structural engineer's report, the intent to salvage some of the materials from the existing building. Can you elaborate on that a little bit, please?
Certainly. There are a couple of things that have been identified in the interior of the building. There's minimal amount of historical elements, but we've uncovered some existing tin ceiling panels, and the Urban Community School has discussed with the demolition contractor and committed to trying to salvage any that are reusable or in decent condition. We've also noted the intention to salvage what we can on the north elevation and the east with the window heads and the bracketing at the cornice. A lot of that is extremely deteriorated, and some of it has recently fallen down. But the idea would be to salvage and donate what could be reused, donate that to an entity to be reused. We are not necessarily proposing to reuse those exterior elements on this building. The tin ceiling, we would like to potentially, utilize that somewhere in the design and the interior.
Thank you. And I think it's common to take pictures of the existing structure so that we have, photo documentation that we can at least keep on record with regard to the historic structure that's leaving the fabric of Lorraine Avenue. Is there intent to take some historic photos?
I'm sure we can comply with that.
Thank you.
That's not a problem.
Thank you, Mr. Strickland. Mr. Santora?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do want to say I think your conceptual plan is very nice. Can you go back to the first floor plan, which kind of shows the primary entrances, Carl? So I guess I'm a little bit just from a conceptual standpoint, because I want to talk about the demolition separately. From your massing, it appears that you put in a lot of emphasis on the community room and the vestibule entry there, as opposed to the actual entrance into the facility. I don't necessarily have an issue with it. I just think it's a unique choice, because it is kind of mid-block now since the road has been vacated. I think it's fine. My big concern is the demolition of the building, and I understand it's structurally unsafe. I think it does need to come down for safety reasons. However, I would really prefer that at least the Lorraine and the what is that, the 48th facade? Is that 48th Street that runs to the west? Yeah, to the east. Be reconstructed to capture the details, at least at the upper levels that are existing. When I'm looking down this street, and that is kind of one of the nice things about virtual meetings, is that I do have the ability to look through. And just as I look, the loss of another fabric building from this stretch between 50th and 47th, I think is really detrimental to the neighborhood. And I think we've seen, and at least even today, instances where historic buildings have been able to be integrated into new construction and design. And I think there are some very nice details on that building which should be maintained to maintain the character of the street. And I think to just demolish the building, lose that, and put in, which is a very nice building with what you're proposing, but it does not have the same type of character, those same type of elements, and the same type of feel that that building does have. So that would be my preference, to see it demolished and then at least those two facades reconstructed with those details back in place, at least at the upper levels. And I think at the lower level, on the street level, that's where I think you can play a little bit And then above that, I think you can also find really interesting ways um, to design out and integrate your new construction with it. But I just feel it would be a real shame to lose everything from that building, and even to just have photo documentation of it, I don't think goes far enough, because we'll be honest, when people are walking down the street, they have no idea. They're not going to take the time to look up photos of what it used to be, and they'll be lost to antiquity, and it'll be gone forever. And so I think it's really important to try to maintain what we have and to try to work with it instead of just removing it, documenting it, and then moving on from it. And so that's my thought. And I think what you guys are doing is great. I would just like to see how we can really blend the historic fabric that we have remaining with the new construction that we're proposing.
Thank you, Mr. Santora. Great comments. Ms. Anderson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to concur with Mr. Santora. A few years ago, I was in Malaga, Spain, which is on the Mediterranean coast, and they have an amazing historic district right along the coast there. I'm not sure how old a lot of those buildings are. They're certainly not 19th century buildings. They're much older. And I recall seeing a building. It was only the facade walls that were standing. It was just the four walls. They were being held together by like all these wires, basically, and the entire interior of the building was being reconstructed so that they maintained the original historic facade, and they have a new building on the inside. Obviously, we are not to the point in the city where we embrace our historic architectural fabric to where we're doing that kind of thing. That said, we're getting to the point where the property values are increasing to where we can take more heroic measures to maintain and preserve, what is vanishing. I mean, we are losing a lot of wonderful properties every year. The building at West 45th and Lorraine, the one that, we disapproved the demolition, but, basically the same arguments were made that, his structural integrity and I understand this is not something that is easy. But we keep losing these buildings, and I just, I don't want to say restore the entire building, but maybe there's something based on like the suggestions that Mr. Santora just gave. Maybe there's something that we can preserve there so that we don't completely lose the historic feel of that street. I mean, there's not much left on that side, and this building, has some intrinsic beauty, even in its dilapidated state. So, it just pains me to see these kind of places come down. It's not like it was 10, 20, 30 years ago where, they're just not economically viable to keep them. I think it's getting to the point where we really need to, not keep it per se, but maybe address maintaining something, something for the future. We've already lost too much in this city. We've already lost too much. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson.
Hi,
Other
everyone. I
questions
just want to announce myself, Tom Gill. I had a funeral this morning, president at Urban Community School. I just want to let you know I'm here.
Thank you, Mr. Gill. We appreciate you letting us know, and we appreciate you attending, especially with the circumstances. Other questions or comments from the commission? I guess I'll insert mine right now. I think I align with, or I do align with what Mr. Santor and Ms. Anderson is saying. I understand the condition of this building, but I do think we need to, in the conceptual design, do a stronger. I think you've come, you're moving in the right direction, but I don't think we're there with the design of showing the respect of, this structure. And in some ways, the recreation is an opportunity here since it's in such bad condition of those second floor details. We have lost a lot of our Italianate commercial construction within the city, especially on this street. So I do feel strongly that we need to, as design progresses, to continue to work on respecting this corner if this structure has to come down. If it is not restorable, then I think we need to work at the recreation of certain things so that it does respect what was there and puts the new life within it. Mr. Brunges?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I know at the last meeting, we talked about the concept of facading, and I think this is a little bit of what's being discussed here, what Ms. Anderson stated. And I've looked at examples of this in other cities, not only here in the United States, but in other, like in Toronto and in Victoria, British Columbia, where they have done this. And even though I think in Toledo, they're doing one right now. The problem that we are facing with this building, and the last person to talk about demolition, because my feelings towards it and keeping the context. I don't think this building, based upon the thickness of the brick, because this is it's a veneer brick. It's not structural, and we know that from the original. It says it in the maps. We know it from the one side that fell, and you can see. Actually, there's a good picture representative here at the bottom. You can see how thick it is. For the facading that we would want them to do, potentially, you would need a much thicker base, a wall that could actually support itself much deeper. And the brick that's in poor condition, I think you're looking more of a recreation or the better nod to it than the actual brick that's there. I don't think you could take all the wood that's behind this and hope that this building would stand. Particularly the first floor on Lorraine has been altered. It's not original. It doesn't have its integrity. But I think, to Mr. Santor's point, Ms. Anderson's point, figuring out a way to recreate it in a modern way to give it that nod. But I don't think you're able to keep the original brick here as a facading concept. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brunges. That's great feedback. And I would agree. And it seems like this building continues to deteriorate because it wasn't constructed correctly and originally. So that's not working in anyone's favor. Ms. Bailey, questions or comments?
Can I see a view of the existing corner of the building of that, if you had the corner of the existing, okay. I just wanted to see how the existing corner look and then go to the new proposed. Okay. So they are carrying over at least the height and somewhat of the existing masonries, even though the color of the corner is carrying over. The thickness may not be the same, but at least it's being carried over. I'm not sure about the height, but at least some transition is coming over. But what I'm not liking is the top part of it, the corner of the top of the height of the glass part. That's the only thing I'm not liking. And can the architect at least tell me why that portion, my part, have to be a little taller, or whomever?
Certainly.
That's the only thing I'm not liking.
I can speak to that.
Yeah. Why is it taller?
The top floor space is a chapel on the interior. And the idea here is that that chapel is oriented with its focal point towards that corner, because we recognize that the corner is an extremely important part of the historic building, and the relationship from this corner to the opposite corner across Lorraine, which also has a tower type feature on it. And the two corners speak to each other. So this is our way of, just a proposal to enhance that corner even more, and as well as enhance the interior space and bring importance to the function that is contained at that corner on the top level.
Probably what I'm not liking is maybe probably because it might look too square, or maybe might look at a different shape to make it look more nicer. I think the square might be what I'm not liking more so than the height. Maybe something look at to see how it can make more elegant at that corner. Because everything else looks nice. I don't have no problem with the height going to the side, but something, maybe if you can try to make that taller part look a little more elegant, and that thinner, the thickness of that edge look more elegant, maybe it might look a little more nicer. I don't know, but I somehow kind of work with that.
Sure, that makes sense. I mean, this.
You know what I'm saying?
I do understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
What you're seeing is, since we pushed the walls back at the third level based on previous feedback, we struggled a little bit at that corner, because prior to pushing them back, we had a thinner tower feature because it came out towards the corner more. But since we pushed everything back, we had to come up with a different solution. But we can, I was
thinking more slant, more versus vertical. Maybe looking at something.
Okay. We understand that corner piece, for all of us, the corner piece is extremely important. I mean, this becomes the entrance, or, you come down West 48th Street and you're at the intersection, you're looking into the heart of Urban Community School. We understand that corner is important and needs to be right. So
it's like the gateway.
We're open to studying that, at the next level in the development of the plan.
And Ms. Bailey, one of the reasons for that distinction at the local historic design review committee, they had asked us to push back that entire floor and to really create a distinction between the brick portion of the building that was a similar size to what it's replacing, and then that essentially new construction, to really make it very distinct between the two, so people understood. So we're happy to work on that.
Anything else, Ms. Bailey? Does that conclude your comments?
That concludes my comment. Thank you.
Thank you. And just to know, I do appreciate that you've pushed back the third floor. I think it really does start to, respond to what we've said and obviously the local too, of trying to respect that existing structure and provide that definition of where the building, was and, what we were proposing on that third floor from a scale, from a pedestrian scale. And just, looking at, Italianate commercial architecture, I'd encourage you just to study that too. It's really interesting to see how common the chamfered corner is in Italianate commercial architecture, and how it brings better definition to structures in that style, and how just the historical sort of references that it does across corners might help you define what the right configuration of that tower is. Ms. Anderson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just want to, acknowledge and I appreciate the comments from Mr. Brunges. The existing building was built with a soft brick, and it needed a much higher level of maintenance than it's received over the last 80 years. So that, I understand that it's not tied in, it's not really salvageable. And I do appreciate the architect moving the third floor back as we suggested at the last meeting. I still am concurring with the chair here in that I think we really should study the Italianate design for that section that is where the existing building sits. And I think we should be looking at, cornices, window rhythm, things that would really embrace the, the historic character that is there now. It's just painful to see another building come down. It just, I think if people's heart and souls were into maintaining some of the lovely gifts to the street that we have received from the early 20th century and late 19th century, the future of the city would be greatly enhanced.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. Other feedback, questions, and comments from the commission? All right, since this is a conceptual review, does the applicant feel like you've received enough feedback to continue the design of your project?
This is Tom. I just want to check in. I know, is the demolition decision separate?
So that's where I want some clarity from Mr. Pettit. It was on for conceptual review. Are we voting on the demolition?
Madam Chair, it's on the agenda today for a certificate of appropriateness. So it's on the agenda for action on the demolition. I do think we need to continue development of the concept plan. As I told the applicant last week, I don't think, the finalization of the concept is not contingent on our action on the demolition. But there's a couple of ways we can handle it. But I do think, given the circumstances, given the history of the existing building and its current condition, I think it's time for us to act and give the applicant some decision on whether or not we will approve the demolition.
Thank you. Thanks for clarifying it. Sorry if I jumped over this earlier. So then we do need to take action on the demolition. So with that, is there other questions or comments related to the conceptual review or the demolition from the commission?
Madam Chair, if I may, if we are going to go forward on the certificate of appropriateness on the demolition, I wanted to inform you that I must recuse myself because of my firm's relationship with the applicant.
Okay, thank you for letting us know that. Other, go ahead, Ms. Bailey.
Before the motion is made on the demolition, can we get clarification on what is going to happen on the property after demolition?
They had mentioned it was going to be seated and maintained until the construction. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Other questions or comments, or someone would like to make a motion then? Oh, okay. Got it. Sorry. Mr. Dryer.
I'll make the motion to certificate of appropriateness for demolition.
Thank you. We have a motion to approve the demolition of the existing structure, correct? Okay, so we have a motion. Do we have a second?
It's Bob Strickland. I'll second that motion with the stipulation that items be salvaged as noted in the engineer's report, and to photo document the existing building and take the commission's comments into consideration with regard to the development of the design of the proposed structure.
Thank you. We have that, the second with those conditions. Further discussion. I would just like to add or recommend adding consideration to add the recommendation to salvage the facade detailing at the corners and the window heads for consideration for reuse, or at least for salvage for the future. Mr. Dry, do you
Yes.
do you agree with those conditions, both by Mr. Strickland and my recommendation? Mr. Strickland, do you agree with that
Yes.
additional condition?
Yes. Mhm.
Okay, so we have a motion, we have a second. Any further discussion? All right, Mr. Pettit, please call roll and announce the results.
Sorry,
you might be on mute.
I was muted. I apologize. Just to clarify your amendment to the motion, it only includes salvaging the window heads on the Lorraine frontage for future use. In addition, but it would also include the elements that have already been identified on the building. Is that correct?
Correct. I'd say that the window heads and cornice details.
And cornice. Thank you.
Thank you for clarifying.
I will now call the roll. Ms. Anderson,
No.
Ms. Bailey,
Yes.
Mr. Bonezzi,
No.
Mr. Dryer,
Yes.
Mr. Santora,
No.
Mr. Strickland.
Yes.
Mr. Tarasik is recusing himself. Ms. Trott,
Yes.
Madam Chair, the motion passes 4-3.
Thank you for letting us know that. like we said, we think this is an exciting project. We look forward to seeing how you continue your conceptual design to your final design, and we highly encourage you to try to, continue to look and respect that existing building moving forward, so that it's not a loss to the community. It's a gain to the overall community, architecturally and from the community standpoint.
Madam Chair, you have a word on that. We recognize the difficulty of this and appreciate your time.
Thank you.
That concludes our certificate of appropriateness and actual reviews. We'll move on to administrative reports.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple items. I want to remind the commission that we have a meeting next Tuesday, September 14th. It's the second meeting regarding the Sherwin-Williams headquarters proposal. It will be for schematic review and approval. The meeting's at 2 o'clock at the same place. It's a live meeting in City Council committee room and chambers. We're trying to keep the meeting to 2 hours, so I would just ask that everyone keep the meeting moving. And I would also ask that the members of the commission confirm their attendance, just to make sure that we have a quorum for next Tuesday. The other item is that our 2022 budget is due on Tuesday also. So that will be submitted before then. And we're going to do our best to ask for more staff capacity, because I think that's going to be key toward our program next year. And that's all I have, unless anyone has questions.
I have a question. Will there be an opportunity for public comment on the schematic for Sherwin-Williams?
There will be. We're handling it the same way we did the last meeting. The public can submit questions and comments through, I think it's through Sunday evening, and those will be shared with Sherwin-Williams, and at some point they will be addressed by Sherwin-Williams. So there is an opportunity for public comment and questions. And I believe there's a link that was sent out in the meeting notice. So that's where you'd find that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I just want to go back to your comment on the budget. I am very happy to hear that you are putting in the request for the additional staff member. I think it's much needed, and hope that based on the feedback we received from council members, that they support it also because of that.
We're going to do our best. We've been asked to keep it as an as-is budget, so it should reflect last year's budget. But I just feel compelled to include additional headcount, because it's going to come up at the table when we go to City Council, and I think I'd rather have it be an issue now than the day we actually appear at City Council. So we'll do our best, but there's, as always, there's no guarantee. There's going to be a change in administration next year, so that may or may not benefit us. But I think it's time we ask for the budget we actually need.
I agree.
I do too.
So we're all behind you, Don.
Thank you. I need that.
Other questions or comments from anyone on the commission? All right, then we are adjourned, and we'll see everyone in 2 weeks.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.
All right, see y'all.
Have a great day.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.
Goodbye, everyone.